Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Welcome, friends, to the Gone to the Dogs podcast. Your host, Steve Fielder, with you one more time. Wish you a happy new year again. And this morning here in Central Florida, we're experiencing a little bit of winter time with a 38-degree temperature. I know that's nowhere nearly as cold as where some of you are, but anyway, I'm recording this on January the 17th, and it will air the following Monday. Our podcast is going to take a little bit different turn this week because I wanted to do a tribute to a fellow hunter that has passed away, and I thought about this and knew that there were some guys that had some stories about him, and so I'm going to be bringing them to the mic as we go along. But on Saturday, January 13th, Bill Wickham of Lanark, Ontario, Canada, passed away while feeding his dogs. He had left the house at 2:30 that afternoon to go out and feed dogs, and of course there was snow on the ground. And he hadn't been heard from at 9:30 that evening. And following the tracks in the snow, they found Bill where he had apparently gone to the first doghouse, sat down, and had collapsed right there. I know years ago Bill had a stroke that affected his speech somewhat, and we can only speculate if it was another stroke or whatever. But, you know, Bill and I had been friends for about 50 years, more than that, I'm sure. And I just wanted to remember Bill because he was a colorful guy. He was a guy that a lot of people knew, especially in the Plott breed. And I just wanted to do this special tribute to Bill Wickham in this episode. Now, Bill grew up in farm country out in rural Floyd County, Virginia, which is a fairly rural county not far from Christiansburg, the Blacksburg area. When I met Bill, he was working as a tugboat captain, directing or towing these big cargo ships and whatever in and out of the harbor in New York City. I had never even been to New York City at the time, and I thought that was a pretty cool job. He'd be working 2 weeks and then off 2 weeks, as I recall. The company would fly him back and forth from the Big Apple to Virginia and so forth. And Bill and my dad and I had gone to a hunt at the Blue Ridge Coon Hunters Club in Christiansburg, and that's where we first met Bill. And that club was a very active club in that day, and I eventually met a lot of my close friends there: Lindell Price, Wendell Bond, Bob Justice, Billy Quessenberry, Dale Breeding, Lance Hutton, and Willie Davis were just some of the fellows that I met there at that very active club. But Bill was writing a column for the National Bloodhound Association at the time, and he had mentioned meeting my dad and me there and had some nice things to say about our dogs. And also I contacted him to thank him, and that's how we got acquainted, really, and started hunting together from time to time. Bill, as I mentioned, the National Bloodhound Association was very active in that group for a number of years. He served as secretary and treasurer 2 years. He served 4 years as their president and 8 years as a director. Now, Bill had a rough row to hoe in his first office there because he was the secretary and treasurer under a president and vice president who will remain nameless here that put the association in very troubling financial waters. And Bill often told me, you know, of his attempts to keep the books balanced when these guys were constantly tapping the treasury for stamps and stationery and things that were in some cases used for personal gain. But anyway, Bill stayed the course And when Larry Everson and Wayne Griggs and I took office in January of 1979, he gave us a zero balance, and Wayne had to take money out of his personal account to buy stamps and so forth for the association. But Bill, although he'd had a really rough row, people knew that he was the guy that kept things going, and they proved that by voting for him several times for president and as a director. He served on the board of directors for 2 of the terms that I served as president of MPHA, so I got to know Bill very well. Bill was a coon hunter when I met him. Later on, he would pretty much devote his time to bear hunting. But when I met him, he had a Kermit Allison bred plot male that he called Wickham's Hellbender. Now, Hellbender, if you look it up or Google it, that's a salamander that grows in the creeks and rocky creeks and so forth. And from the pictures I saw, some of them were kind of brindle stripes. So I guess that's where Bill got that name. I don't know for sure. But people that hunted with Bender liked him, said he was a good hound. And Bill, I think, later sold him. The fella ended up, I think, maybe catching a lot of coon with him. But anyway, when a little later on, he had a dog named Wickham's Black Bear that became a Grand Night champion. And I talked to my good friend Bob Justice recently, and he recalled one time when Bill couldn't go to Autumn Oaks that he took Bear and hunted him in the hunt and actually won the cast with Bear. But there's an interesting account of the 1980 ACHA World Hunt in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, that Bill wrote in an ad in the MPHA yearbook. And I want to read that to you right now. Bill said, at the welcoming ceremony hosted by the governor of Arkansas, the officials of the Arkansas Game Commission, and the officials of ACHA, it was announced that we have dogs and hunters from 34 states. A total of 537 dogs entered, and that entry consisted of 300 plus walker dogs, 75 or so black and tans, 125 English dogs, about 40 blue ticks, 20 red bones, and to quote Bill, and a damn plot. When the third night of the event came around, the plot was still in the hunt, and over 400 of the other dogs had been sent home packing. What I would like to see is a plot hound recognized for what it is, a top caliber tree dog. I would like to see something in the top 20 besides those blankety-blank walker dogs. That was Bill Wickham. And I'm going to bring now to our Gone to the Dogs podcast microphone a fellow that knew Bill. There's an introduction here, so let's get right into that. As we think about our good friend Bill Wickham, and we certainly miss him and will miss him going forward. The last time I saw Bill was at the Houndsman for Conservation meeting in New York, and I was getting everything ready to go into my talk and looked at the back door, and there came Bill, and it was like a homecoming for me. It was such a great experience to get to see him again. I hadn't seen him in several years, but in thinking about Bill, and we've certainly talked about him and in a lot of different ways here, but I began to think about a story that involved another friend of mine. Hadn't known him quite as long as I knew Bill, but he is a fellow West Virginian and a transplanted West Virginian to the state of Michigan, as I was for about 22 years. And I hunted with him several times when I lived up there, and of course would see him at the events, the UKC, and mainly the PKC events. And he has a story about Bill and how he and Bill became acquainted, and it involved a dog, of course. But I wanted to bring to the mic, and actually as our featured guest this week, my longtime friend, Mike Sheppard. How are you, Mike?
Doing great, my friend. How are you?
You know, Mike, I'm doing much better than I deserve. I certainly am, and it's great for you to consent. I think I got my tongue wrapped around my eye tooth, and I can't see a word I'm saying today, apparently. But anyway, it's really great to be able to visit with you. And as I was thinking about our friend Bill, I thought, well, man, this is a great opportunity to get Mike on because he's got a great story. We all have a story. And that's the idea of this podcast, is to get as many of these stories out there for other people to enjoy and relate to and so forth. And so I'm just very happy, Mike, that you've consented today to come on with me and spend some time. I want you to kind of, now you're from West Virginia too.
Right.
From southern West Virginia, as am I, right?
I was born on the Tug River, which my family was on the West Virginia side, which was Mingo County, but the hospital in South Williamson happened to be in Pike County, Kentucky. I'm so West Virginian that my great grandmother was the niece of Randall McCoy.
I knew there was a reason that you and I, every once in a while, the opportunity presented itself for us to be on the opposite sides of a question, is that I was just doing some genealogy work today, and as you may know, or we discussed it before maybe, my mother was a Hatfield.
Well, I feel bad for you.
Isn't that amazing? It's a small world.
Well, we're related to a bunch of hillbilly moonshine drinker terrorists, if you know. But anyway, that's the way life was back then, you know.
That's right. It was a different world, wasn't it?
You settled it however you settled it.
Yeah. Well, I've told this story on the podcast before, and I'll be real brief. My grandfather always said, well, we weren't related to those feuding Hatfields, but when those computers came along, I had the ability to go back and trace all that stuff back. I found that he and old Devil Anse Hatfield were cousins. They came down from two brothers, So,
It's kind of nice to be part of probably the two most famous families in America. The Hatfield.
That's right, and thank goodness they've settled their differences.
Sure, but but when you asked me to join you, I got to reminisce a little bit, and I got to thinking about the little dog that I sold Bill.
Yeah,
and the way it got started, and I think you initiated the deal. I had taken the dog. I believe his name was Cooter.
Yeah. Was that what you were calling him? I know Bill later on. Is that what you called him when you had him?
I called him Cooter.
Okay.
And I had placed him in a few hunts, and of course, him being a plot, it drew your attention to him, and you asked me about him, and I don't know if you remember this, but you tried him. I think I talked to Bill on the phone, and either you or Bill set it up for you to try him. Now, you picked a great night to try him, if you remember. It's about a foot of snow and 20-some degrees.
Yeah, but and you came over to my place.
Yep. And
All
you
right.
remember the little dog treat a coon that night.
I
I'm
do,
pretty
and I
sure.
remember what he did to tree that coon too.
Yeah. Yeah.
He trailed that coon across a plowed field. Am I
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was
And it was a
big.
good ways across there. And I had a little plot female along, I believe. And I believe that's what I was hunting. Maybe you can remember. But I can remember my dog couldn't even smell that track. And that little plot dog took that thing all the way across that field and tree. He impressed me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, did Bill make him a Grand Night champion?
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Okay.
He posted in one of his ads in the plot yearbook that it took him 17 months to make him a Grand Night champion. Now, that's not too shabby.
No.
Because back in the day, you had to beat every night champion on the grounds in order, and do it 5 times.
Well, these young guys now, they don't remember when there'd be 150 trucks for a UKC hunt
Yeah.
back in our day.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was so popular back then.
Yeah.
It's expanded too many legs out there now, too many places for guys to go now, so they don't draw them like they used to.
Right, for sure. Well, Mike, and that was okay. I want to, while we're on that story, let's just finish that. Then I want to there's a lot of things I want to ask you.
Well, I got more. I got some more stories about Bill. I got a Walker female from him.
Yep.
That was a very nice dog. Absolutely, just the way Bill described her. And Bill run an ad with two plot dogs on a rig on the front of his truck for sale. That's when he was in either North Carolina or Virginia, wherever he was.
Virginia, yeah.
And I bought one of them dogs, and the only bear I ever killed. I had that dog with me. I got in bear hunting for a few years with the Woods boys. Doug Jr.
Doug and Jr. Yes.
And
Greenville back probably.
Yeah, Greenville. And we all went up to Nipigon, Canada, and I had that dog I got off of Bill, and I killed my only bear up there. Once you kill a bear, that was okay. That was enough for me, And I killed me a bear, but anyway, the dog I bought off of Bill was in on the hunt. So yeah, it's if I remember Bill, I don't know. He seemed to be pretty soft spoken. Is that right? I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
He was a man of few words, but he described the Walker female and the bear dog. I forget the bear dog's name, but he described him to a T, and that was our story,
Yeah. Well, as I recall, Bill told me when he got that Walker female, I think he was down south of his home there he lived in Floyd County, Virginia, in a little town called Reiner. And the fellow that's going to be on the podcast a little later, Heath Hyatt, lives there now. But it's not far out of Christiansburg. Floyd County is a fairly rural area. My friend Lindell Price used to talk about. He said he and his wife, a big day for them was they'd buy a bottle of pop, as they call it down there, and
I remember Lindell. Yes, I do.
And get in a truck and drive down to Floyd and stop at the red light and turn around and come back home. But he was coon hunting down, I think it was in South Carolina, and heard this Walker female treeing and found out who she belonged to and all. And I believe that's the way he got that female that you ended up with. Yeah.
She was definitely she was a wood dog.
Yeah.
When I saw that Bill Wickham had died, and I saw that his address was Canada, and I'm thinking, No, that must not be the Bill Wickham. But then I figured out it was. But you know what that told me?
What's
The
that?
man was so passionate about bear hunting and his plot dogs. He went up there right in bear country.
Yes, he did. He
So
sure did.
he loved it. For him to pass to it's no good time to pass away. But him going out there to feed his dog, it's almost you know, it makes sense for a dog man like him.
Yeah, Mike, that's exactly right, and that's the feeling that I got. And someone made a comment, what better way for a dog man to go? Either in the woods with his dogs, or doing what he loved. And this brings up so many thoughts to me. But we see online and in these Facebook pages and so forth, people that don't understand hound hunting. And they talk about all those hunters, how terrible they are. And if a dog doesn't do right, they just leave him in the woods and go home. And all these kind of things that are absolutely not true. I'm sure it's happened at some point, but that's not the way we roll. And, just spending time with your hounds, it's therapeutic, whether you're actually on a hunt or not, or at least I always felt that way. Did you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right. Well, okay. I knew that you and Bill had gotten together that way, and I'm glad that I was able to introduce you to Bill because
Mhm.
you're birds of the feather as far as I see. Now, okay, you come from an area of the country, very much like I did, where coon hunting is a chore. It's a job. It's
Absolutely.
difficult. It's tough. How did you get started coon hunting? Was it in West Virginia or in
No,
Michigan?
no, it was I my parents went to Lorain, Ohio. To My dad got a job at the Ford Motor Company, and I came up there when I was probably 2 or 3 years old.
Hmm.
And I grew up in Lorain, and fortunately, there was the United States Steel Plant had a bunch of land along the Black River, which I could walk from my house and go back in there. And for some reason, I found myself just drawn to the woods.
Yeah, oh,
And
okay.
I'd go back there and squirrel hunt, and finally, my neighbor had a little rabbit dog, and I got hooked on the rabbit dog and got me a rabbit dog, and then I saw where the red fern grew,
Mm-hmm.
and I love my beagle so much that I was fascinated with coonhounds. So I uh, I got started, and before long, uh, it dawned on me. I mean, I was just thinking about reminiscing a little bit that by the time I graduated high school, I think I'd been out of high school 1 year, and I got a call from Burl Weasel, this is a name that goes way back,
Oh, yeah.
and we all flew down to the very first PKC pro hunt. Back then it was called uh,
PCA.
PCA, and it was called a tour hunt.
Yeah.
And I hunted the very first PKC or PCA tour hunt, pro hunt, whatever you call it. And I got to think, how many people can say that? I mean, I'm
There's
sure
only
there's a
one
few,
first.
but I was,
That's
I was, I hunted the first one, and
how about that?
I'm sure there's a few guys left, but I don't know.
All
It's
right.
been a long, long time ago.
Can I
You
ask
know,
you how old you are now, Mike?
I turned 66 in November.
Okay. Well, good. I've got you by 11 years.
Well,
Yeah. Well,
I remember you commented not long ago that me and Ronnie Bone are about the same age,
yeah.
and he was having trouble turning 65. And I remember you telling him that he'd get through it and be okay. And I did see that, and I got a chuckle out of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a guy there that's been one of the hardest hunters our sport's ever known, and a good friend of mine, a guy I really like a lot.
You
And
know, go ahead,
no,
Steve.
but he and I'll give Bone a little plug here. He and Jackie Coomer used to ask me all the time to come down and go hunting with them. And
Hmm.
I was living in Michigan and at PKC at the time, and I just couldn't make it because of all the work related travel. But Bone did me and my family a tremendous uh, favor one time. He called me and he said, your dad and my dad worked at the same plant in Keville, Kentucky. I said,
No
that's
kidding.
right. It was back in the 50s. And he said, and it was a plant where they diffused uranium for the atom bomb.
Wow.
And my dad worked at 3 of those type plants, actually in the construction, the building of the plants at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Portsmouth, Ohio, and
Yep.
at Keville, Kentucky. And he said they've announced that the Atomic Energy Commission is compensating the families that have been affected by that radiation or the asbestos. See, my dad was a pipe fitter, and the pipes all came wrapped in asbestos blankets and, or cloth, all that. And my
Yep.
dad did have asbestos poisoning in his lungs.
Oh
So
no.
through Ronnie telling me about that and giving me a heads up, and I followed up, I was able to greatly, uh, how can I say, make my mother's latter years much more comfortable than
Oh, great.
they would have been. And I
Great.
appreciate Ronnie for that.
Sure.
And I know his father has passed on, has mine, and I sure miss seeing Ronnie at the hunts, and a good friend, a guy I really like. I guess a lot of guys that drew him down through the years probably didn't like him as much because he usually was packing
Yep.
a coon dog, and I
Well,
think you hunted against him, didn't you?
oh yeah. Let me. You. I've been thinking about some of the handlers that I hunted with in the past. Uh, the Jackson brothers, Dave Dean, uh, Ronnie Bone, Beller, Green. I would have to say that Wayne Green was probably the smartest handler I ever drew. Now he quit in his prime,
Yeah,
but
to make lights. Wayne
yeah,
once told me, he said, you can't beat a guy on Friday night and sell him a light on Saturday.
exactly. But I'll be honest with you, the best all around coon hunter I think I ever met was Ronnie Bone. Now the reason I say that is I did go down and hunt with him and Jackie a few years. Me and Jody Schlosser would go down there.
Oh, yeah.
The man was absolutely a coon hunter, hunt all night.
Yep.
He entertained you. You could draw him in a cast, and he had the ability, the same as a guy like Dave Dean would have. They could beat you to death, but you'd still like them.
Mm-hmm.
Or some of the guys would beat you to death and rub it in.
Yeah.
Uh, Bone's got a charisma. He could do his own TV show. Um,
Absolutely.
and yeah, he is, he's still there, but he's not hunting like a lot of us aren't. And but he was dang sure.
Yeah, I've hunted with
My best
Ronnie. I've
choice.
judged Ronnie. He was always nothing but a gentleman. Um, always packing a good dog. Some nights
Absolutely.
they look better than other nights. I remember a situation with Ronnie one time that he had the opportunity to really uh, go postal, because it
Sure,
was frustrating.
sure.
Involved driving all the way out to Missouri to a Grand Slam hunt and getting there and not having the proper entry documents or whatever. And he was hunting the dog for somebody else and having to refuse his entry. And he didn't kick chairs all over the clubhouse and raise a stink. He just took it
If
and,
I could give a tip to any of these younger handlers that are into the game, the best handlers like Chris Allen, Ronnie Bone, they would never lose their temper.
right.
They would never go ballistic. They would never lose their temper, and you know, and they never got in trouble for that.
Right.
So a lot
Right.
of times the guy that throws shit around and cusses and swears, he's the one that gets the most repercussions in the end.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you cannot, even as frustrating as it is, you gotta keep your head about you.
Well, that's for sure.
And
Well,
let's face it, there is times. I mean, I was just a kid out of high school, and I had a couple bad breaks as a kid. I should have been in a couple finals of the World Hunt. It didn't go my way, but um, it's just the way things roll. So you have to stay calm headed, and it'll get you farther in the long run.
well, that's for sure. Absolutely. And I tell young people all the time, or have down through the years, they withdraw, or what. There's
Sure,
procedures there for you. There's
absolutely,
steps you can take. The registries have provided means for you to get your case heard, either by a panel or perhaps by an appeals panel or through a formal complaint procedure or whatever. There are if you've really taken it, and you feel you're right, you
sure,
need to go through those channels, because when you get mad and quit, you lose all the way
sure,
around. You have no
absolutely.
chance, So, well, that's good stuff, Mike. Very
But
good stuff.
dogs have been a big part of my life, and uh, I hobbled around the last few years that I hunted, which probably gave me a bad attitude. But I suffered from chronic gout in my right foot,
Mm,
and it ended up I had to have two foot surgeries. It just disintegrated my right toe
mm-mm.
because I pounded it so much, and
Yeah.
it got to where it was too painful to go, and I just kind of had to quit. So about all I do now is deer hunt.
Well,
Uh,
you were always pretty much of a deer hunter. I
yeah,
remember you have a guide service or something?
yeah.
Or,
When I
or
was
yeah.
I started. I got the idea of opening up a guide business, and when I approached the DNR of Michigan, they had never been asked that, and I ended up talking to the main guy, the head of the DNR, and he says, "Well, we don't have any rules for that." He said, "But I don't see any problem with it. Now they got rules, but uh, I started out in Hillsdale County, Michigan. I was the most hated man in the county, bringing all them people in there and killing all them deer. But
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
that's what happened. Yeah,
I got you. Well, you like to turkey hunt too, don't you?
yeah. And speaking of turkey hunting and plot dogs,
Okay.
some of some of the better, and it's good. This is going to lead to turkey hunting, but anyway, Ray Stein and Adam
Yes.
O'Donnell had a little female named Annie.
Yes.
Well, they're
Sired by Buckeye Bud, the PKC
yeah,
world champion. Yep.
a tough little dog.
Hmm.
And I got a hold of
Absolutely.
Adam this spring, and he he invited me to turkey hunt and put me on killed a nice bird just at the break of daylight. But anyway, you think of these. There's very few plot dogs that you remember, but Kurt Seibert always carried a good one.
Yep.
The little mini dog of Adams and Ray's. Uh, of course, John Walkup,
Yep.
and the little Bud dog was. Oh, he was a machine, man. Yeah, he was any dog that can score like 1,200 down in Kentucky. I don't care if it's a plot or a cur or a walker. You've got a coon dog. And
Well,
I remember Bud scored about 1,200 down there in the World Hunt,
yeah.
and he was just incredible, you know.
Well, I've always loved the plot dog, and and there really wasn't anything about just being different from everybody else that appealed to me about plots. It was more of a family thing with me. That my dad loved that breed,
Sure.
and got involved in it, in 1954, and that wasn't long after the plots were officially recognized.
Right.
In 46 actually. 8 years later, but the first one we got had several dogs on her pedigree that didn't have any registration numbers,
Right.
But
Right.
all right, but now I always knew Shep to be an Englishman.
Well, the what got me into the English dogs was Ed Bates. I was a big fan of Ed Bates when I was a kid, and
I hope
with that
Ed's
time,
listening. I hope Ed's listening so he can hear you say.
I'll make sure. But Ed was the man when I was a kid.
Oh yeah,
He had Cash and Hard Time Spec and uh,
and a
Bates
bunch of
Moose
them.
John
Yep.
and I wanted to be like Ed. Never quite got there, but got close a couple times. But that's I always liked the English dogs, and I ended up with a couple pretty good ones in my lifetime. And first good one I had was called Mojo. Um, he ended up making the Grand Night and Supreme ACHA Night Champion, which you don't hear much anymore about that. But of course, the old Woody dog that I
Sharp
pounded.
Woody.
Me and Pam pounded him through the country, and
He may be, and I just wanted to really think about it, but I figure he's probably the best English dog I ever hunted with. And I've
he was
hunted with a lot of English dogs.
if I've been told by guys that good hunters and winners that one guy told me if you'd he would pack a little bit too much, but I never was a dog beater. I didn't have a good heart. I had a big heart. I had a good heart, and I couldn't hardly whip a dog unless they really, really absolutely needed it. I guess he did at times, but if he'd have been, of course, he'd split tree and all that stuff. But
Do
if
you
he'd have,
remember the night that I took you and Woody up what I call behind the hog pen up on a little hill there in a patch of woods, and we put Woody in there on a night hunt?
yes, yeah,
He put
yeah,
on a clinic that night, I thought.
he he was I tell you where he he got me second in a truck hunt. He got me second in the nationals. Uh, I won. I don't know. I think I was the top 70 handler back years ago, and he was the main part of that. I think I won 25,000 with him or something. But he he was one of them dogs that I wouldn't have been afraid to hunt him tonight. And he'd have worked in there, and he'd have made me a tree or two, and probably had a coon on a den or something. He was a good hound, and if he'd have been a little bit more independent, it's hard telling what I could have won with him, you know. But
Now, if memory serves me, and I could be way out in left field here, I may show my ignorance. Was he out of Sheppard and Johnson's Duke?
no,
Okay.
He was just a single. He was out of not hardly any titled dogs, and the Shepherd and Duke dog was my cousin in Defiance, Ohio. Had him.
Okay. Was he younger than Woody or older?
He was a lot older,
Okay.
but he produced some good hounds. That dog
Yeah.
did.
My buddy Nubbin Moore, Arnold Moore in Alabama, he bred a female one time to Duke. I know.
Mhm.
Nubbin's been primarily a black and tan man, but he had English female apparently there for a while. Yeah, well, Woody, he was a red tick dog, kind of. It wasn't real solid ticked. Describe Woody.
He was. You mean his body wise?
Yeah, what he looked like.
He was a tight made dog.
Yeah.
I think he had an injury when he was younger because one of his hind legs wasn't quite right. He'd carry it sometimes, and but you know, I wish I would have been able to breed him some more because one of the things I'm most proud of is I got a pup out of him in the finals of the Super Stake in 2004.
That's awesome. Well,
yeah.
that's the year that I went down to AKC from Michigan. I was with PKC, and after the World Hunt that fall was when I went to Raleigh, North Carolina. So I guess what did you call that dog, Mike?
I jokingly called him Mini Me one night over that, that Austin Power movie, jokingly. Well, guess what? That's
stuck, huh?
Mini Me.
Yeah.
He was about 70 pounds, huge dog. And, the name didn't fit him, but that's how he got his name. But he was a good pup, man. I, get him in a year old and got him in by treeing coons in Kentucky.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was kind of what it was all about. You get a good dog out of your main dog, and you compete with the elite pups in the country, and you put on a good show. And I think I finished third with him. But,
yeah. Well,
all that stuff's a memory now.
In those days, there was a lot of pups participating, though.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't have as many divisions then either, where they divided them up, every year, each year. So, yeah. Well, you've hunted in Michigan. How long have you lived in Michigan there?
Well, I met Pam in 79, and probably
that was the best day of your life.
Yeah, her life. Did you say her life?
No, I said yours.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's sitting here.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to butter her up. she knows I like her.
she's a tough gal, and she walked every step and more when I hunted Woody. The kids were grown then, and
yeah,
she was with me. And a lot of times, if my foot was killing me, she'd go get him in at the end. Didn't matter how far,
Yeah.
Tough woman, very tough woman. But about 1980 is when I really moved up here. So I've been up here most, 3/4 of my life anyway. And I love the state. Go Blue.
Go Blue. How about that, man? Let's just put the brakes on right here and talk about who are the national champions.
Yeah.
National.
The Wolverines.
The Michigan Wolverines. Fred Miller would be so happy. Fred always bought season tickets to the Michigan games. And he would cherry pick what he considered the best games. He had lived in California for many years and was a USC fan. And if USC came to town, forget it, And he would also probably pick the Ohio State game if they were at the big house, or maybe Notre Dame. But otherwise, then Sarah, who worked there in the office, and I would have choice, And he had 4 good beautiful tickets on about the 35-yard line, nice up, where you could see everything really well. And I used to go to the big house. Man, I loved it. If you walk in that place and there's 115,000 people sitting in a bowl,
Well, usually if the Big Ten competed against Alabama or Georgia or Clemson, any of them Southern teams, we figured we was going to lose. Here, this year things changed, and the Michigan team this year puts you in mind of the Steelers in the '70s. Just a tough bunch of guys that just beat you to death, and just won by just getting the job done.
Absolutely. In the first half, it was really brutal.
Sure.
But
absolutely.
Hey, you were talking about Pam and her being with you and helping you through the fact that you had the issue with your foot and all that.
Sure.
I ran across something that Bill Wickham, since we're talking about Bill today, that he wrote in an ad. I'm sure he paid for this, in the National Plothound Association yearbook. And it was the, let me see here. It was the 1989 yearbook. And there's a picture of Bill standing there and a plot dog there behind him. And he said, wanted, female hunting companion to help raise and train plot hounds. Must be able to drive pickup truck 200 miles in 3.5 hours to make hunt deadline. Miss work on Monday hunting for dogs lost at our state night hunt on Saturday night. Must be able to live on truck stop coffee, stale donuts, and greasy fried food. Must also be able to worm pups, give distemper shots, cure parvo, and skin coons. It's preferred that you have your own Carhartts, wheat light, hip boots, and dog leads. I, in turn, will provide pickup truck, above average coonhound, not sing country and western while you're trying to sleep in the cab of the truck while waiting for dog running deer to quit and come in. It shall be joint responsibility to maintain a home, buy dog food, keep UKC papers up to date, and change oil in the lawnmower. Please send picture and pedigrees of dogs you may own. No walkers the owners need apply, unless very good at dusting first place trophies. If you respond to this ad, be prepared for me to arrive upon your doorstep within 24 hours.
Well, if Bill was still alive, here's what I'd tell him. I found her first.
Wow, that was great. I wanted to try to squeeze that in somewhere. I was looking back through the yearbooks, and as I mentioned earlier before you came on, Mike, Bill served several years as officer of the National Plothound Association as the president, secretary, treasurer, and director. He was really devoted to his plot dogs, for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't heard from him for years, but when I heard how he passed away and where he lived, what he was doing, the man was dedicated. He when hunting got hard in the States, he went up there where the bears were,
Well, he did. And,
he
kind of transitioned, and again, I addressed this about the dogs that he had, Hellbender and Bear, and then Cooter were all three extra nice hounds that he owned. And but he got the bear hunting fever at some point along the way, and he used to hunt with a guy named Danny Thorne there in Virginia, and my buddy Heath Hyatt later on there. And but you know, Bill was single. He had been married. He went to Canada and he met Rhonda, and they were together for many years until she passed about 10 years ago with cancer. But he really became a bear hunter, a passionate bear hunter.
How long was he in Canada?
He was up there. I don't know exactly how many years, but the gentleman that told me about Bill passing, and I'll have to, he'll have to forgive me here right at this point for missing his name, but he said he had bear hunted with Bill for 30 years. So I know Bill was up there a long time.
Wow.
Yeah. He used to tell me he was he was always a thinker, you know, and he told me, he said he had his baits set out, which is legal up there, but he would put up the old beep beep tracking collar on the bait, and he have the magnet attached to a string apparently, and when the bear hit the bait, it would pull the magnet out of the tracking collar. The tracking collar would go off, and he had a receiver at home, and he'd know the bear had hit the bait, so he'd go run the bear. So I guess he was kind of a forerunner of the guys that have their trail cams set up on their coon
that's
baits.
a great idea. You know, when I got hired by Joy Dog Food.
I wanted to definitely talk about your years with Joy.
I got the job primarily for my success with the dogs, and I remember another thing about Bill. I don't know if he was married, but him and his companion, his girlfriend or whatever, they sold Joy Dog Food, and they were a big distributor for years.
Yeah, they're in Floyd, Virginia.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and Bill was we'd get to go, and I want to thank Joy Dog Food. They gave me my I got to see the world a little bit with them. The driving was what being away from home, and the driving's what kind of ended it for me. But I still I'm appreciative of Joy Dog Food for the opportunity that they gave me. You know.
Yeah, it's a good company, a long-standing company. You know, I knew Chip Kozer, and of course his son Chip is now with this Elite. I think it's called Elite. It's a I'm going to get in trouble here. I don't even go there.
Sure.
Because I'm going to mess it up for him. I just talked to Chip. We'll call him Junior. I guess he's a junior at the Grand American last week, and he's doing really well and still affiliated with Joy. And of course, Josh Michaelis is out there, kind of the voice or the face of Joy out there among the coon hunters and hound hunters and so forth. And I see where they've just put on a new representative. And so anyway, that company has had a resurgence, you know, here in the last few years. And
can I tell you a story about Chipper? I think.
Absolutely. I'd love for you to.
Chipper. Do you remember Mike Harper?
Oh, very, very well.
Well, most everybody knew Mike. He had that shaved head and it was waxed, and
watch it anyway. Now. I'm bald as an onion, so
well,
just
me
watch
too.
it.
but anyway, back in the day, Mike wore a toupee,
Mm-mm.
and we were sitting at Chip Coacher's, and we were at a meeting. We went to Chip's for a barbecue or something, and somebody convinced Chipper to run by Mike and pull his hair.
Oh no.
And what he did, he pulled that toupee right off of Mike Harper's head.
Oh boy. Well,
And
I
I
can see
remember,
Chipper doing that, as you
yeah,
call him. Yeah. Yeah.
it was one of the boys. I think there was four of them boys, but I'm thinking it was probably Chipper that Marty Parker told
Yeah, I
Marty
remember
Parker.
Marty. Yeah.
Marty Parker had one of them boys run by Mike Harper and jerk that wig, and he pulled it right off. And oh, it was hilarious. And he stood there holding that toupee like, holy moly, what have I just done? You know, but that was that. You
Oh, the
ever?
good times. I can tell a couple funny stories too. Um, well, actually, a funny story, and then one that's kind of like this tribute that we're talking about with Bill. And I'll go there first. Larry Meeks was at my house in Schoolcraft, Michigan. He had come up for the weekend to hunt with me, and we were sitting there in the kitchen when a call came through that Mike had died.
Yeah.
And it was a very sobering, sad time for us because, you know, anybody that went to Aurora, Kentucky and worked the PKC World Hunt or spent any time there remembers Harper. And what a fun loving guy he was. I'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you, he grilled one of the best pork chops I've ever eaten in my life for
Mm-hmm.
Larry and me when we were at his house there in West Tennessee. But Mike apparently was going to a beagle trial or one of the his assignments, I guess, and apparently he had a heart attack while he was driving his truck and left the highway. But it was a great loss because he was just one of those guys that everybody enjoyed seeing, and he was always full of fun and all, you know, and. So, but a quick little story that's kind of, we were going to go, Mike had invited us, the PKC staff, out to to have dinner at their camp where they were staying during the World Hunt. You know, people would go down and rent cabins and trailers and all kinds of things, you know, and
Oh yeah, I
stay
remember
the
them
whole
days.
week. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fun.
10 days when they had the super stakes and the World Hunt all together. So we go out and somebody's leading our group, you know, and they tell us where to go. And it's outside town there and you got to weave around and all. And we go and then we pull up to this place and there were several of these camps there together. And so we get out and we go walking in. Now, this is all the PKC people. Larry, I think probably Rita, maybe, you know, Mike Craney, I'm sure. I don't know. I'll miss some names, but several of us. And we walk in this house, and these guys are sitting there at the table, you know, and he says, "Hey, how y'all doing? We're fine. We're fine. Yeah, nice day today, yada, yada." And we said, "Well, where's Mike?" And he said, "Mike who?" And he said, is Mike Harper here?" And he said, "No, never heard that name." We got the wrong house. We just saw the whole gang of us filed right in this guy's house. And he was just as nice as he could be and his wife both. And they said, "Oh, well, stick around, you know." I said, "Well, I think they're waiting supper for us. We better go." But that was,
Hey, I'll tell you something that Mike Harper did that was hilarious. It probably gets you in trouble nowadays, but uh, he was into the Beagle field trials,
yeah.
and there was an old boy in Indiana. He passed away just a few years ago, named Tom Baker. And Tom was judging And Tom puts you in the mind of a guy like Tim Conway, the comedian.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
well, the judges were sharing a room, and Tom Baker had no idea who Mike Harper was. Well, the guy that Tom was bunking with let Mike Harper knocked on the door, and the guy opened the door and says, "Ah, man, we don't want no trouble." And Mike come in there with a pistol. He said, "Where's this crooked judge at?" He said, "I'm gonna take care of him." And Tom Baker rolled off the bed and crawled under the bed. And that's the kind of sense of humor Mike
Oh,
Harper had.
yeah.
It was all a joke, but
It never ended.
Tom Baker about had a heart attack. That was, that was funny. Mike told me that story, and so did Tom Baker. It was hilarious.
Well, Mike, there's no way that we could express really on this podcast how much fun it was back in those days around those guys. I think of the hunters today, and I get in trouble for this from time to time because they think I'm talking down to them, and I'm really not. I'm trying to encourage them. But, we had fun at the hunts. We went to fellowship, to joke around, to have fun and all. We went out, we competed, yeah, but it was just a ball, and there was a lot of people. There was a lot of laughter, a lot of things. One time I was at Aurora, and it was late at night, and somebody there. Well, we had brought our guitars and different instruments and all. And there's a guy there in Aurora, and I can't think of his name. His name was Stephen, but he could play a harmonica like Charlie McCoy. I mean, this guy was amazing. So we all got back there and were playing, back toward away from the office area. And after we were done, I came up through there, and J.C. Ellis. Did you ever know J.C. or meet him?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And he said, "Well, I knew the hillbilly had to come out of you sooner or later." And, and just laughing and kidding each other and just having a great time. And that's what I'd like to see coon hunting become again. I really would.
It's hard to, nowadays, I wouldn't even know how to run one of their tracking collars. They know every step the dog takes, which is good. And I guess now your dog can't even tree with another dog. I mean, they got to be off by themselves, and
Yeah.
which is good. I liked it. Some of the reason I won with Woody was because he'd get part of yours, and then he'd get him one by himself.
Oh,
And
yeah. Well, that was all.
It added up.
Sure. Well, that was always our plan, get some of everything and then get one or two by yourself, and that would kind of seal the deal for you. Nowadays, they want them. There's a guy named Lane Denny, great guy out in Oklahoma, won the UKC World Hunt with a walker named Emmy, posted where they had a great hunt here last weekend, I think it was, and I forget, he said 8 or 9 singles they treed on the hunt and walked 9 miles. 9 miles. Now, come on. I've walked 9 miles bear hunting before in West Virginia, but I didn't do it in 2 hours or an hour and a half.
Right.
And it's just, it's crazy. And that's what the game has become for a lot of people. But I was having a conversation with somebody at just the other day, and we believe it's coming full circle. I think because of the fact that do you have a place up there in southeastern Michigan that you can hunt that kind of dog and have 4 of them going a mile to 2 miles in different directions?
I would have to go I'd have to go to the west, closer to Hillsdale County.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and some of the places like that, you'd almost have to hunt state land. I mean,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
it would be next to impossible here because, they might not even go in the first patch you turn them. If one tree's in there, the other one's going to go around it and go somewhere else. So,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the game certainly changed, and I don't want to be this guy that's always telling these newer hunters, younger hunters, it was better back in the old days. We had our time. This is their time. But I just wish that they could experience the time that we had. And one of the things gets down to about being a handler, and we've talked about that on this podcast a lot. It doesn't really require a good handler nowadays because your dog is by himself. He's in there. Basically, all you got to do is get close enough that the judge can hear him and
mhm.
say, "Do you hear? You have me in there, Judge? Yeah, I hear it. Okay, tree me right there, and take your time doing it because nothing else is going to be there. That was not the way it was when you were hunting with Dave Dean.
No, you'd have to have the hammer come. When you got four dogs screaming on the same coon, and you got a 25 points separating everybody, uh, I had the hammer cocked. Now I didn't always get it right, but I I would win when I did. So, but yeah,
Exactly.
things
Absolutely.
have changed.
Uh, did you hear the Dave Dean story about the night he had a spell? He fell down on the ground and was like, and maybe rightfully so. And they were administering to him. Oh, Dave, what's wrong, man? Hey, you all right? What's going on? Dave kind of cocks his ear up and says, "Tree hammer."
I heard that story. Dave Dean, you talk about handlers. Now, I hunted with Dave towards the end of his career, but I seen him do something one night, and he ended up beating me by doing this. Uh, it got down to the end of the hunt, and he was ahead, and his dog treed on a tree that it didn't have anything in it, plain and simple. And Dave looked at it, and like I said, Dave never lost his cool. He was just, he was like an attorney out there.
Yeah.
He was highly intelligent. He was a smart guy.
Yep.
And he says, "Well, let me ask you one question, sir." He said, "Is there a possibility that a kitten coon could hide up there somewhere?" And the guy judging says, "Yeah, it's a possibility, but possibility the world will end tomorrow." If Dave took that question back, and the guy, the
Master House.
master hounds heard the stories, and Dave said, "Let me ask you one question, Mister Judge. Did or did you not say that a kitten coon could hide up in there?" And the guy said, "Yes." He said, "That's all I need to know." And Dave won the cast.
Yeah.
And of
Well,
course, it cost me to lose, but I I kind of got a chuckle out of it. I mean, it was just as slick could be, but I didn't dislike Dave Ford. He had that personality like Ronnie Bone. You just couldn't get mad at him.
yeah. We used to
They
say Barry Kitty would have made a great lawyer if you ever heard him on a question at Aurora.
Barry Kitty was, yeah, he was a
Was the
tough
best.
one. And I hate to, I don't want to disrespect any of the old handlers. There's a bunch of good ones. I just know some of them that I competed against, and over the years, it's guys like Dave Dean. Uh, I hunted a couple times with Frank Giddings, and
Hmm.
uh, Beller and Green, and not all of them were great experiences, but they were learning experiences. And Chris Allen, Chris is kind of reaching his end of his career, but I hunted with young Scott Engel and a lot of these guys that dedicated most of their life to it. And there's always characters out there. There's always winners. There's always losers. Personalities that you like, that you kind of got along with, and other ones that you didn't. But that's the same if you watch a football game. I mean, you're in the heat of the battle, and one little word or one little mistake, and it's on. But you got to respect them all for being a part of the game. That at one time in my life, if you told me I couldn't go to coon hunt, I'd have tore some stuff up. Now you couldn't pay me to drive to a coon hunt. I mean, I guess that comes with age, but
well, we do. And what I've always loved it so much, and I really do love a good hound, and I love to listen to a good hound or watch him work. And I have resorted to having partners, and I've been fortunate to have some good ones that are taking the dogs and doing what I can't physically do anymore, and that flat land over there where you are, I can walk to the trees, but I can't go a mile one direction and a mile another direction. And,
right.
and then walk back to the truck. I mean, I'm going to be dragging if I do. So
well, I was going to mention this to you because I see, and I'm happy for you. You got a plot dog now that I think you strive to get most of your life, and I see you got you a good little night champion dog and some young guys taking the reins for you, and I'm happy for you because I know how much it means to you.
Well, I appreciate that, Mike, and I am having a lot of fun with that little dog, and I've told the listeners on this podcast several times, I have some friends that include me in the loop. If Mark Miller, that's hunting the fever dog, the plot dog, if he's out there, he's sending me video clips. And he's telling me, how the dog looked and how far he hunted and doing screenshots of the garment. And if he goes to a night hunt, he's sending me a shot of the scorecard. That, and it allows me to participate. And same thing with Keston Jesse with the Walker dog there in Virginia. And my friend, I made a friend that he and I have just, I don't know why or how or anything else, but we've just become very good friends. And that's Randy Smith in Pennsylvania with the Lone Pine dogs. And he does the same thing. He sends, I think Ella gets a little upset with me sometimes. We're watching a TV show and I'm constantly interrupting to see a video or read.
That Randy Smith, that seems like a real good, solid family.
Tremendous.
They rabbit hunt, deer hunt, coon hunt. Do they have a lot of land out there?
He grew up there in that community as on a dairy farm. He and his brothers, they know everybody in the whole area, and he has a very successful critter or exterminating and critter control business. So everybody in that part of the country knows Randy. And he's just we talked about, you and I together about, I told you one time, I thought you were very passionate about your hunting and so forth. Terry Walker told me before I met Randy, he says he's the most passionate guy I've ever met. Whether you're fishing for lake trout up on the Arctic Circle or you're chasing bunnies, he just is a 200% dedicated. And he lost his father here a couple of years ago, and I know he kind of looks at me as a grandpa, or something, but he has two fine boys and a beautiful wife, and his mother is still living, and they have a tremendous family relationship there. So he's real
Looks like they
solid
kill
guy.
a lot of nice deer too, don't they?
They do. They kill some
Yeah, I
nice
see that.
deer, and I've been fortunate to take them down to Virginia to meet my buddy Heath down there, and the boys have each taken a bear down there, and
Wow.
also that's been cool, been really cool.
Yes,
Mike,
absolutely.
you know what? Has been an hour and 6 minutes that you and I have been on this podcast, and I have really enjoyed the opportunity to visit with you and for you to help me pay tribute to a good friend and a mutual friend of ours. Has there anything that we should be talking about that we haven't yet?
Something I see that's kind of taken a hold in the country is these squirrel dogs.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's just Terry Shear in Ohio. He he's got guys just in line for him to train and pay good money, and you got squirrel dogs going for 20 grand. I mean, it's just incredible.
well, it's interesting that you mentioned Terry because he had the reputation of being one of the best coon dog trainers in that part of the country. He have a little female that was a sister to Molly or
No,
or
no,
no?
he had Molly.
Okay.
He
Well,
had Molly. I drew Molly and a littermate sister to her named Abby that Dave McCullough, who passed away tragically years ago. I drew them the first year I had Woody, and they were like 6 or 7 months old,
yeah.
and they wore me out, Steve. And I told Al Noneman, I told Al about Molly, and because I drew her several times when Terry had her, and well, she was tough, and Chris Allen ended up
For
Chris
Alan
and
Wilson.
yeah, Chris and Allen bought her, and the rest is history. 2 pickup trucks and 100 grand,
Yeah.
but she was a dandy dog. But anyway, Terry Shear, you ever seen a guy that his personality, his dogs take on his personality?
Well, I've heard of that. Yeah.
He has that. Very few guys have that, but Terry's got that personality that he takes in pups in his garage, in his pole barn, and he does little tricks with them and hides stuff, and they find it, and he gets them where they mind, and he had some German shepherds he could send to the refrigerator and get him some pop. But yes,
Yeah.
he's a good trainer, probably one of the best, and he was a tough competitor. He liked to win just like we all did, but he is definitely a dog man.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, he had that rep, and of course, I don't know that I ever hunted with Terry, but I knew him and saw him, around the hunts there. That's a wonderful part of the world for a coon hunter, or used to be. I don't know exactly how it is now. I know they have that Michigan Madness up there each year now, and the guys love to go to Michigan to hunt. I remember, when I could I had an overlay. Oh, actually, it was in a sheet protector, a sheet of lists of names of my landowners and their phone numbers, and there was about 30 of them that I could look at when I wanted to go coon hunting, and I could,
Sure.
and it was just a wonderful time for me, those 22 years that I lived in Michigan, coming up there you came at a much younger age than I did. I had
Mhm.
my stereotypes in the back of my mind of how
Sure.
Michiganders were going to treat a hillbilly from West Virginia. But I found a lot of wonderful people, including
Most
you
of
and
them
Pam.
migrate. Most of them migrated up there. But
That's
hey,
right.
I do want to say one thing about. I said years ago that they should have the World Hunt in the spring
Yeah.
because there was no leaves and things were easier to score and score right. But anyway, then it got to deer hunting is such an exploding sport
Oh, yeah.
that guys are so mad and there's trail cameras everywhere. They need to have, and I think they're going to have it this spring. If I'm not, I don't want to misspeak, but aren't they going to have the World Hunt in the spring this year?
PKC is, yes. Mhm.
Okay, well, when they had in the fall, especially in Illinois, where them hunting camps they charge
Mhm.
$4,000 or $5,000 to have and they've got hounds on there, even though we know it shouldn't hurt, but the deer hunter don't know that.
Yeah, you can't convince them either.
You cannot have this day and time. You cannot have a World Hunt or a Grand American or anything that's going to interfere with deer season because people are going to go nuts,
Yep.
which
Well,
they
it's
did
true.
in Illinois.
Right. Well, we tried the World Hunt in the springtime in South Carolina when I went to AKC, and it worked really well for us. So I hope that it does work really well. And the one thing that has been great for me, Mike, back in the day, I worked for UKC. Then, I was always competitive about my job. I wanted UKC to be the best. And for many years, I was a UKC man. That's what I grew up on. That's what I loved and all. And then, I was able to go to PKC, and it was a career move for me, and it was an opportunity and all. And I tried to be loyal and there to them as well. And then ultimately with AKC. But, now I'm glad let's just put it this way. I'm glad I didn't burn those bridges.
Sure.
Because now I can go to Autumn Oaks and have a great time with Alan Gingrich and Trevor Wade and all those guys, and just have a great, enjoyable weekend. Or like we just did here a week or so ago at the Grand American.
Sure.
I can go to the PKC World Hunt. And, I just visited with Roger Dale on the phone here this past week for a good while. Enjoyed working with Roger. We had a great relationship when I was with PKC. And with David McKee and Jimmy Phillips are still with the AKC and all. And I tell them now, I'm a cheerleader. That's what my job is. I'm a cheerleader for coon hunting. Right. I want them all to be successful. I want them all to have the hunters to all enjoy what they're doing because
Absolutely.
the sport's been great.
Yeah, you've made a living at it, and pretty good for a hillbilly out of Beckley, West Virginia.
Boy, think about it. Well, listen, my friend, I am going to push the button. I do have one more little segment that I'm going to add about my friend Bill, but I appreciate so much you coming on, Mike. It's been great. Number one, just catching up with you and Pam, and knowing that you're doing well, and all, and that's what we always hope for our friends.
Am I going to be famous now? You think?
Well, you'll be notorious. I don't know about famous, but no. For those, if you're listening to this, you know how to get the podcast. But to tell your friends, just go on the computer and type in podcast.dusupply.com, and when it comes up, anything that says "Gone to the Dogs" on it will be me. And we do one of these every Monday. It comes out bright and early on Monday morning. And friends, you've been listening to my good friend Mike Sheppard from Adrian, Michigan. Mike and I have had a great conversation here today, and it's been well worth my time, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as well. And so, Mike, you and Pam take care of yourself, the kids. Hope everybody's well, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, catch the fever.
Thank you, brother. Well, once again, I want to thank my good friend Mike Sheppard for coming on with me today and talking about our mutual friend Bill Wickham. Mike had some interesting memories of Bill, and then, of course, I took the opportunity to talk to Mike for quite a while because he's an interesting guy. And in fact, he's calling me right now. I'll have to put him on hold. But anyway, Mike's an interesting guy and has a good story. And I really welcome the opportunity to share his story with you listeners today. But right now, before we close this podcast, I wanted to get in touch with my good friend and longtime friend, Heath Hyatt. And if you've been listening to podcasts at all, haven't been under that proverbial rock, so to speak, you know who Heath is. He has his own podcast, The Journey, I believe that's on the Houndsman XP network. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to get together with Heath for a bit here and share some of our memories of Bill Wickham. How you doing, Heath?
Man, Steve, I'm not in Florida. I can tell you that. It is down in the low teens, supposed to get down to single digits. I have stuffed straw and doubled dogs up and brought crates in the house so I can get some of the dogs that I can't double up in the house in the basement tonight. So,
ooh. Yeah. What's your overnight low going to be like?
It's supposed to be 7.
Oh, that's cold.
A little too cold for me.
Well, you could add a 0 to that and be what I'm looking at down here. It was about 70 today.
I think I'd take it. I really would. I'd take it.
Well, we had a few days, I always joke down through the last few years with these podcasts and never talk about the weather, and then always end up talking about it.
First thing you talk about.
That's right. But anyway, it's been a little cool this winter. We had a miserable hot summer down here, and but it's been a little cool this fall. Some good hunting weather actually, but it's winter time though. It's January. I
bet you miss them West Virginia winters, don't you? And Michigan,
not a
worse.
bit. My mother, who bless her soul, lived to be 100 years old. She used to say the only thing between here and the North Pole is a barbed wire fence. and that's about the way I look at those clips, from up in Michigan and think, boy, it's pretty, but I don't want to go back to that in the wintertime for sure.
Yeah.
Well, is all your hunting, your bear hunting season's over now, I guess?
Yeah, we're a couple weeks out. The dogs are getting over, how you flip the light switch on at 4 o'clock in the morning, everybody comes alive.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting them back down to, we're not going hunting now, so
okay.
But yeah, our hunting's over. Had a fairly good season. Didn't catch as many bears I'd have liked to. We did good, and we harvested. Everything we harvested was over 200 pounds. So
that's awesome. That's good.
We tried to make that as our guideline for this year.
Well, I definitely want to talk to you some about your hunting and about the activities you got going on and your podcast. You're a busy guy with your police work and all
yes.
the things, all the hats and a teenage daughter and all that stuff. But the purpose of this podcast, of course, today has been, it's been bittersweet. Having to remember a mutual friend of ours that has passed, but also remembering the good times we had with Bill. And you live there in the same part of the world that Bill. In fact, you live in the town where Bill lived when he was in Virginia, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep, sure do.
Yeah, he lived in Reiner, I believe, the first time I went down to Bill's to go hunting with him. He lived on the farm out there, and I couldn't get back to it. I think it was right on the main road to Floyd, wasn't it? Or do you? Yeah.
You and I've talked about this, and I'm not 100% sure where he was at, but we're definitely in the right town.
Right. Well, the reason I wanted to talk to you, and of course, you kind of did this. You and Bill kind of took the same route. You were coon hunters and then went bear hunting crazy.
Mm-hmm.
and focused on bear hunting much more. My dad was in the same boat. But when I first knew him, he was hunting coon dogs, and we met, I believe, at the Christiansburg Club, and he was writing an article, a column for the magazines, and had mentioned my dad and me, and I think I called him or wrote to him and thanked him for that, and that's how we kind of got to be friends. How did you meet Bill Wickham?
Through you.
Okay.
So it was our second year at Plot Days in Pomeroy. So the first year was when you and I hooked up, when you and Wrangler and me and Brandy won.
Right. You won, and I was first loser.
He was right there. He was the high score male.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was
so. You had introduced us, and Bill come to me sometime during that week, and I don't remember exactly when. But Bill come to me and asked me if I was interested in hunting, or he had this dog named Tippy that he was trying to grand out. And he's like, Heath, listen, I'm in Canada. We don't have hunts up there, and I'll work something out with you. So I ended up taking Tippy and home with me after Plot Days and granding him out. Now, here was the catch, and it's kind of funny how small the world is, how things work out. So Bill told me that he was leaving Plot Days to go to New York to bear hunt. And I'm like, okay. And Bill and I worked out the agreement that if he would let me come up and hunt with him for a few days, all he had to do is pay the entry fees and the gas. I wasn't going to take any other money from him.
Mm-hmm.
All I need you to do is pay the entry fees and the gas. You let me come up and bear hunt. And sure enough, we left Plot Days. I went back home. I think I worked that week, and I don't know, maybe Friday evening or Thursday evening or something, I took off and went to New York. And Bill is part of the reason that I've met some of the guys that I still have good relationships with in New York. Bill was hunting up with Rodney Galusha. And of course, I met Rodney through Bill. And then I met Ben Gadway. And I met all the guys up there, not Anthony, but those guys because of Bill and my connection with Bill.
I see.
And that opened the door for me. Rodney and I hit it off, and I started pretty much going to New York yearly after that trip.
Right.
With Bill. Mm-hmm.
Well, how about that? Well, that's, I knew that those young brain cells you got would remember that stuff that has kind of gone under the bridge for me, so to speak. But yeah, and I know once Bill moved up there, I guess you might remember, did he move up there after he retired or before? Do you know?
It was after. Yeah,
after okay.
He ended up meeting Rhonda,
right?
And in fact, Rhonda was in New York. I counted up our 2 or 3 years with Bill when Bill was up there, and Rhonda was always with him. And of course, he had moved up there and ended up moving in, or I don't know if they bought a place or if he just moved into Rhonda's. But yeah, that's where he moved up and ended up with Rhonda.
Right. Well, I know when I met Bill, he was doing the tugboat captain gig, in New York Harbor and all, and pulling those big boats and all in and out of New York City. And he would be away working for a couple of weeks or whatever, and and they were flying back and forth. I thought, man, he'd tell me about what they had to eat, all that steak and lobster and all. I said, man, you're living the dream, man.
Mm-hmm.
But
and now that you say that, Steve, it may have been on the end of his, because now that you mentioned that, I remember Bill talking about that way back when. So he may have done a few jobs. So if he was not retired, he was on the retirement train, like he was getting ready to.
Right. Well, I know once he got up there, of course, he really enjoyed the hunting up there. It was so much better, easier, I'm sure, than what he had down there in Southwest Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what year was it that I came up? It was the first year that I came up and stayed with you, and we bear hunted for a week. And Bill and Rhonda came by, and they hunted a whole 2 or 3 days with us.
So it was so I met Bill in 98. So it was either that fall or 99. And it was 99 because Tyler was just born. So it would have been 99. That would have been exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that would have been just not long after I went to work at PKC.
No, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, because in 98, in June of 98 was my first event. I went to the national championship in Florida. Well, I remember, do you remember in particular, did you do any hunting much with Bill after that initial meeting up there?
Yeah. Like I said, I went back to New York. I know the first year and the second year. And then I went to Canada in 2000. And actually I went up and hunted with, we went up and stayed with Robert and hunted a week. And it's kind of funny how this works out. So while I was up there, my truck, I blowed the rear end out of my truck. And I was going to send it up to Roy and them to have it fixed. And I just ended up staying with Bill. So I went to Bill's. We got the truck to Bill's. And I don't know, I probably stayed another week and hunted with him and Rhonda. And there was a guy by the name of Heath, and I can't not remember his last name, but he had a big old red brindled plot named Rooster. And of course, Bill was running plots, all plots pretty much. Well, he was all plots at that time. And my truck was down, like it was down. So we hunted that week, and it's kind of funny because that week we ended up taking a bear, and that was the first time anybody had ever taken a bear with a bow with me and the dogs, and I was involved in it. So yeah, we had a hard race and treed up in a big old poplar tree, and the guy come in, and I don't know his name. I don't remember, but I stayed at Bill's that week and ended up, tell you guys a little bit about my truck adventures. And I know, Steve, you've heard this story 100 times. So I blowed the rear end out of it. They wanted double up there in Canada to fix it. So I had called my mechanic, and we had been going back and forth the whole week. And finally, Charlie just told me, he said, Heath, he said, drop the drive shaft, grease up the front end, and get it back across the border. So I had called my dad and told him my granddad owned a junkyard. So he had to call a dolly. So I called Dad and said, listen, you're going to have to come up to the border and pick me up. I'm 4 hours from the border.
Mike loved that phone call.
Well, he wasn't happy about it. So I got up whatever morning it was, Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember. And I loaded the dogs up, and I probably had 8 or 10 dogs. I mean, I had a truckload with me. And I 4-wheel drive, 4 high. And Charlie told me, he said, just, don't fly, just get it back across the border. Well, when I hit the border, I never slowed down. I drove that thing plumb home, like home. Well, Dad called me, I don't know, 5-6 hours into it. And he's like, where you at? And I said, man, I'm almost in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Like, I'm not stopping until this thing blows up. So we're coming home, or you're going to come and get me. And anyway, I made it all the way home in 4-wheel drive, and that was my old Chevy. It had 360 on it when I got rid of it, still running.
What a tough old truck, man.
Yeah, the story, long and the short of that story is, I bought a whole chunk, the rear end chunk, for $600 and had it replaced, where they wanted $2,500 up there. So that was the whole hold up. I ended up staying some extra days, and Bill and Rhonda took care of me. And but yeah, I hunted that whole week with them. Like you said, they come down and hunted with us. I want to say he come down 2 years. The year that you were there, like you said, I think they only hunted 2 or 3 days. They were doing something else during that time period, and I'm not sure what it was.
Is that the year that we killed the bear earlier on around
Yes.
we took the picture?
Yes.
Yep.
With Frosty, Bell, Clyde, and I had a dog named Rufus.
Yeah, and I had some kind of plot. I can't remember.
You had Singer.
Singer. Yeah, she was just real young that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's to remember those times, Or did you didn't, or did you know Bill when he had his store there, his feed store in Floyd?
I did not.
Right.
I did not know Bill at that point in time. Now, I had heard, because I coon hunted at the Christiansburg Club. Of course, people talk names, and so Bill's name had kind of floated around probably for a couple years. I had heard it, knew it. But until you introduced us at Plot Days in 98, I didn't know Bill, like, personally.
Right. Did you ever see Bill get in a hurry?
No. No.
He was the most laid back guy. I think one of the most laid back that I've seen. I mean, he just had an easygoing personality, and to me, he did. You hunted bear with him a lot more than there's a good story about Bill, and I don't know if you were along on this hunt or not, but he came over and we were hunting in Greenbrier County, up there in that Cold Knob area. Did you ever hunt up there with us, with my dad and me?
No.
Okay, it was training season, and it was a beautiful, I'm going to say, September or early October day. Leaves were beautiful, probably late September, early October. And we run this bear down into this canyon that they call Pete's Shooting Range. Any of the boys from Greenbrier County or hunt that Cold Knob area, they know what I'm talking about. And so we'd let this bear down, and it had some young dogs and had a rerun there, And my dad was along, and my dad was a guy that was always thinking about what's going on around, and all, watching things. So those boys wanted to run the bear out again. And my dad said, "You better leave that bear alone. That bear's had it. She's over it." I think it might have been a sow. I don't remember that part for sure. Oh, no, well, we'll run it out, and they'll run to the top of the mountain, and we won't have to lead all these dogs up out of here. That was the thinking, the justification for running that bear again. That's what the bottom line turned out. And there was a walker female in the group. And now these weren't all plot dogs. These were, those boys up there, they hunt. At that time, they hunted, crossbred dogs. Some of them were more kind of English type dogs. But anyway, that bear, they pulled the dogs back and I guess yelled and whatever you do to get one to come down. And she came down and just picked out a dog. And she picked out that walker female, and that was the end of the story. And actually, we lost a dog right there that we shouldn't have lost. And it's a good lesson, I think, for bear hunters. And leave him up there, walk away if you get him treat or whatever. But I realize sometimes, I don't know whether that's illegal or not, but I'm sure the statute of limitations is over.
It's run out by now.
It's run out by now. But, and I always remember that. But the thing I remember most about that, beyond us losing that dog, was what a beautiful day it was. And we were just laying back on the leaves on a hillside, looking up at that bear and that blue sky and those white puffy clouds. And I just remember thinking, man, this is heaven on earth right here, listen to the dog's tree and being with good friends and all. So I'm glad I've got that memory of Bill, because he and I both were really soaking that up that day. But,
yeah, you both have told me that story.
Oh, haven't?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure enough. So when you started talking about it, I knew exactly. And it was a sow bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know the bear wasn't harmed that I know of. I don't think it was season. I believe it was just running season. It could have been an early season, but I don't remember harvesting that bear.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they'll do that. You ever see a bear pick out a given dog? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've become quite the bear hunter, Heath, and been under a lot more trees than I ever was. But I stood under a few down through the years, and have always enjoyed hunting with you. That's for sure. I hope to get back up there next year.
Well, I was going to say, hopefully it'll be a few more.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
We'll have to lasso them and get them a little closer to the truck, but I think we can make that happen.
That's right. Well, I want to bring my buddy Nubbin Moore with me next time. Nubbin's never killed a bear or ever stood under a bear tree, so I want him to experience that too. So I don't know of a finer bunch to take him with or better chances to get under one than with you boys. Well, do you have any other memories of Bill before we?
No, I mean, like I said, I spent several years there. I mean, you're looking at a 5-7 year span. That Bill and I hunted quite a bit. Like I said, we covered ground in New York and Canada. And in fact, in Canada, I was up there twice and hunted, skipped a year and went back and then hunted again. Like I said, he come and hunted with me. Like I said, I hunted a couple dogs for him, and I granted the one dog. I ended up buying that dog from him. I bought Tippy. He was such a nice show dog. He was a pretty decent coon dog, but now he did not really, he was not the bear dog that I was looking for.
Gotcha.
Coon dog, he done fine, run a tree good, nice looking dog, put up right.
Yeah, I remember. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, but like I said, we
go ahead.
No, I just gonna say, like I said, 5, 6, 7 years there, Bill and I was in the woods quite a bit, and Rhonda was always with Bill most of the time. Yeah.
I enjoyed hunting with Rhonda. She was a good hunter too. You mentioned a rooster dog earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Was that dog that produced a lot of pups? Guys were breeding to a lot from up there.
Well,
was that a different dog?
Steve, I don't remember, but this guy was from Toronto, Toronto area.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know Bill and all of his infinite wisdom, him and this dude, this Heath guy, and if he's listening, I can't remember your last name and I apologize, but they were in the process, they were crossing bloodhounds back and forth. They had got a female and a male bloodhound, and they bred the rooster dog to the female, and they bred a female plot to the male bloodhound. And I ended up with 2 of those pups. And of course, they were definitely not what I was looking for at the time. And I think that, the last I had talked, this was during that 5, 6, 7 year period when Bill and I, had kind of not separate, or just kind of lost touch, because I got into law enforcement and I moved. Everything changed in my life. That was why that we didn't keep in constant communication. But they were trying to work to figure some type of thing out with that. And Bill sent 2 pups home with me the second time I was up there, and they just wouldn't tree. Like they just would not tree. They would run, and I can't say they were fastest thing in the world. They would run, and they definitely open on track, but they come into a tree and just stand around like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Yeah. So that was another thing, memory with Bill is he was all the time trying to figure out something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I guess that phase kind of bypassed me. I didn't remember that particularly, but I guess they were trying just to put more nose in their dogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what he was doing. And it's funny you say that because my old picture album, I have got the 2 pictures. I've got a picture of that rooster dog on that poplar tree that dude shot out with a bow, and it scared me to death because the first time I'd been around something like that, and I just tied my dogs back and kept them tied back because you didn't know.
Sure.
But I've got a picture of that rooster dog and Frosty and Rufus on a tree, and we actually caught one. Rufus, we caught a bear in a hole up there one time, and it done some damage to a couple of my dogs. I wasn't real happy with that, but that was just part of the hunt. And then I've got another picture of Bill and Rhonda. We were in New York, and Smokey, one of my young Walker dogs, Rhonda's petting Smokey, and I told her at that tree that I said, "You better not do that." I said, "You'll rub that Walker rub off on some of them plots." Yeah. But I've got the picture. I still have that picture
that's great.
Of us there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe we can do a written article sometime as a tribute. But,
that would be
this podcasting thing, and of course, that'll be a good segue into what I want to talk to you about next. But, if you produce these things every week, you got to scratch your head sometimes about the content, what you want to do and all. And of course, I've been real busy here lately with going to Grand American and all that. And I was kind of hoping that you would make it, but I imagine things were a little too tight this year. Maybe.
Maddie, yes, I hate that I didn't get down there. Maddie had a volleyball tournament. She's playing travel ball, and she had a volleyball tournament that weekend.
I got you.
And I just couldn't make it, but I hated that I didn't get down there for a day or two.
You were the good dad and did the honorable thing, so good for you. Well, I don't know if I can lay claim to this or not, so you correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you record your first podcast with me?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Well, sure did. We talked about a little bit of dog training and ring and some of the old dogs. Yeah, absolutely. It was the very first time was with you, sitting right here in the living room. Yep.
Sitting right there at your house. And I got there for a while. Like it seemed like, I just came in the door and went on back to my room.
It's still there. It ain't moved.
Check out Maddie's dragon. What's that dog? That thing?
We got rid of that thing. The bearded dragon. Yeah, I got tired of feeding it. Like, feeding holy
those
cow.
Crickets, man.
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway, I always had nothing but enjoyable times, and you suffered through some of my learning curve trying to figure out how to use these recorders and stuff. But we had fun, and I really enjoyed the ones that we did. Like I know that we did one with the veteran where we sat down there on the creek on a picnic table and recorded.
With Jason, that was with the
second fellow.
Was it Jason? Jason Wellworth. Yep.
Yep. So, and you've been great to do that. I know I participated in a couple of those Freedom Hunters hunts with you. And and that was always fun stuff. And well, what's going on with, first of all, let's tell, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know this, but your podcast is called The Journey, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you are on the Houndsman XP network, right?
Yep.
And then with the Sportsman's Nation, is that, or what's that called now?
Yeah, it's the Sportsman's Nation. We are getting ready to do a change, and I'm not educated enough right now to like point you in the right direction. But in the near future, when you go on to Apple or Spotify, you will just look up The Journey, and you can download it there. And that's going to take place in the near future, and
Good.
I guess I'll get that out to the listeners when I learn more about it. But yeah,
Sure.
so we air on Steve, you're on Mondays, and I stayed away from that, and I'm on Wednesdays.
Well, good. I appreciate that. Well, it's just the familiarity, is a good thing. People get used to, oh, it's Monday. I'll see what,
Mm-hmm.
what Fielder's blabbering about today. So you'll be on every Wednesday. Of course,
Yeah.
those of you out there are new to podcasting. When we say it's on Wednesday, you can always go back and listen to it anytime you want to thereafter. But they premiere on a given day. Well, that's great. Well, I've kind of had a little bit of that I don't know if it's a problem for you, but for me, being on the W Supply Network, people don't always know where to find me. I'm on this. Well, actually, their network is called Hound Cast W Supply, I think. But now it's finally gotten around to where if you go on any platform and search "Gone to the Dogs," it'll come up. But well, that's good. But you'll still be The Journey, right?
Yeah, the name's not changing. It just won't be on the Sportsman's Empire. So
Okay.
it'll be a different feed, an RSS feed, and like I
Yeah.
said, that's above my pay grade. I don't understand some of that stuff. So when it
Well,
happens, we'll tell you how to get there, but that's about it.
right. Well, the old saying is you don't really like to see how sausage is being made. I mean, you like it in the sizzle in the skillet, but you don't really need to know what happens on the slaughter room floor, I guess.
That's right.
But, yeah. But anyway, yeah, I'm the same way, and that was why when I decided to go a different direction here back a couple of years ago, when Buddy Woodbury invited me over there, that was a perfect situation for me because I didn't want to learn how to produce podcasts. I just know how to talk in this microphone, and I don't do that very well. But and let somebody else worry about all that stuff.
Well, it's
Well,
a full-time job. I mean, Steve, it's I work full-time. Maddie's playing travel ball. I'm traveling every other weekend at the least. And, like you said, trying to get content for every week, like
yeah,
it's a chore. I
it
mean,
is.
it's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really it hasn't grown, and we won't get into all that, but it hasn't really grown to the point where you can quit your day job and become a professional
No, it's not.
podcaster.
Yeah, no.
So, but well, anyway, you had some good stuff. I like the little I don't know, vignettes or little pieces of the little go live pieces or whatever that you do. I call them trailers or promotion.
The reels. Yeah.
Reels. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Just looked at one today and saw you had that dog out there in the snow. And,
All training. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not a big social media person. I do it more because of the podcast and stuff like that. I have to make myself. So if I don't respond right back to somebody, just give me a little bit of time, and I try to get back to people and everything. But the reels are just a little clip about what's going on in my life at that point in time, and then I'm telling you what's coming up. So it's it's a 30-second, 45-second clip, and that's about it.
Well, I think people nowadays, want their news in short bites, and but then too, I don't know if you hear this, but I hear a lot guys say, "Oh, I want you to record longer." Because I'm they're listening while they're working, or they're driving a tractor, or they're long over the road trucker, or whatever, and but I usually try to keep the length around an hour and sometimes an hour and a half. Nubbin, he said, man, I don't listen to those things. They're too long. And I thought, well, what do you got to do, man? But it's been fun. It's been a fun ride, and I've enjoyed doing it. I guess I will, as long as I can think of someone to bring on that people enjoy listening to.
Well, I will say this, like Steve, your connections, even when when we used to come up to Michigan and hunt, like it always amazed me that the people you knew, and that's one of the things the podcast has done for me is networking. I get to talk to people that maybe I normally wouldn't get to talk to, and I get to learn about other people, the way they hunt, or the species or the game they hunt. So it's a learning experience, and it's a networking thing for me, and I really enjoy that part of it. I've always, my family tells me I can sit down and talk to a stop sign.
Yeah, well,
and I think that's the part of it that I like is the learning from other people.
Well, Heath, you've always been a student of dogs and of hunting, and that plays well with the career that you've chosen and with this podcasting gig and all. You study things. You're a learner. You're inquisitive. You want to know why, and I think then that translates over to the information that you learn. You're able to pass on to your listeners, and I think that's what makes it good. I listen. I'll confess, I really don't listen to podcasts very much. Okay. I don't know whether it's because, I have to produce one or, present one every week, but I don't listen to a lot. But there are certain things that I do that catch my eye that I do really enjoy. And I think that's one of the things that's good with having these podcasts out here, that you can kind of shop around and pick things that you enjoy. I might not be the most interested guy in some of your police dog work, but I find it interesting. But I am definitely interested when you're talking about working these young dogs and how you're handling them going in and the nutrition and all that sort of thing. I think any true hounds person or dog person enjoys all that kind of stuff. But do you have anything coming up that we can tell my listeners about to look for?
Yeah, I know you're some of the guys that you, especially the competition guys. I've got a podcast that's coming up here in the next week or two, and we're going to talk to a vet about the artificial insemination, about getting the dogs collected.
Great.
That's starting to be more and more popular. In fact, what got this started is I tried to do some research because I want to have one of my dogs collected. And for me, I don't have somewhere to store it. That's the biggest thing for me. And then when I got to calling around, well, it's like, $50 a month here and $125 a month here. So, I've got Aaron coming on, and her vet clinic is starting to do it. And I think, if people want to learn about this, because that's what I want to learn about it, because I want to have spook collected.
That's coming on? I think the thing hit up a little bit there.
Oh,
who you bringing on?
It's going to be Aaron Wood, and she runs. It's Dove. Sorry, Dove. Aaron Dove. Sorry, Aaron. I didn't mean to butcher you. I was looking at too many things at one time. So Aaron, she runs a vet clinic up in Elkins, West Virginia, and you and I have spent some time up there.
Yeah, we have. Helvetia.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, she's going to come on and she's going to talk about what you need to do, stuff you need to consider. And like I said, it become more and more popular for them. So that was a reason that she got interested in it. So I'm going to actually take Spook up and have him collect him.
Awesome. Wouldn't you like to
So,
have some semen from Ring or Frosty?
yes. In fact, I know
Maybe
you
you
didn't
did.
come this year, but so Little Man, which was the son out of
Right,
Ring, he
right.
passed
I know
away
what
back in December, and that was the last. Like you're getting, I mean, he was the son of Ring. Everything else now is 4 generations back.
I got you.
So
Well, you
yeah.
know, we've got this young plot dog, Fever, and he's not
Mm-hmm.
really related to my old line of dogs, but he is back to the hoss dog that I had, and is his grandsire, and raised a female out of hoss named Dancer, and also we got some bear pen there for 2 or 3 generations, but it's not the old line, you know. And I would
Mm-hmm.
love to have some Roper semen,
I
you know.
told me and Bryce Matthews had this conversation first week of December. We were walking one day, and I told Bryce that Roper was probably one of the nicest, if not. And I mean, Brandy was a nice female, but Brandy and Roper were two different style of dogs.
Mhm.
But Roper was a super. He was a Walker style plot.
Mhm.
Drive a track, bring up those 3 yodels, and just come into that yo yo. I mean, just a steady chop. I mean, super nice dog. And I told Bryce that I would love to have some of the dogs that I had out of him.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
little candy
That
female, like
candy,
I'd love to have.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I still have pictures of those pups, you know. Well, you know, there's a fellow named Charles Payton that hunts PKC a lot. They call him Sluggo. He lives down at Elizabethtown, Kentucky. And Sluggo hunted with Roper some when Steve Taylor had him down at his place for a short time. And he just, every time he sees me, he said, I like that Roper dog. That's, you know, that's my kind of dog. So it does, you know, it kind of swells your head a little bit when people say that. But he was a good one, Heath, as we know. And man, he died way too soon. He was only 7 years old when his kidneys totally shut down on him. So that's one of the heartbreaks, you know, that you have in these dogs. But one of the females that we bred to him was, of course, Brandy, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then I had David Westbrook message me the other
Mm-hmm.
day and say that he would like to have been able to brought Go Annie, you
Go
know.
Annie. I thought they bred to him.
Well, they did, but he was talking about this Fever dog I got, and
Uh,
I did. We did get some good pups. That's where Evan Workman got his good bear dog Drum.
mm-hmm.
Came from that Go Annie cross, you know. So anyway, we'll get back there and the old saying, the deader the better. But uh, yeah, there. But that frozen semen thing is so important, and so many people are using. We just got the Fever pup collected
Collected.
here recently, and you know, my friend Randy Smith up in, and you know Randy, he's
Pencil.
been
Mm-hmm.
there to hunt with you, and you know, he works with that quite a bit, you know, and I mean, I say works with it. He has semen, you know, from some of the, you know, famous stud dogs of the
Mm-hmm.
past, Trackman and Bone Collector and dogs like that, you know. So, but yeah, well, that's cool. That'll be great. A lot of guys will be interested in that for sure.
Yeah,
And
we're gonna do. I don't know how I'm gonna adjust them or lay them out, but we're gonna do a wrap on bear season. I've got a new litter of pups that this is my B litter, so I'm gonna be giving a rundown of the B litter, where the A litter's at. So yeah, we've got some things coming up that should be interesting. It's definitely interesting to me, but I'm out here the ones feeding them every day, so.
well, that should be interesting to anybody that has hounds to listen to the methods that people are being successful with hounds. And you know, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and sometimes, you know, I get a lot of questions. You talked about the network, that you've gained through podcasting, and it really can be a vast network. But I get some people that want to ask question after question after question, and then they don't trust the answers enough to follow through. Well, sometimes you got to try these things. You got to listen. And when somebody that has more, I don't say the years matter, but if somebody that has experience, you want to listen to them. And one thing came to mind with me. I know that your hounds that you're hunting now, roots go back to the Mike Kemp dogs out in Oregon. And I see, if I'm interpreting his posts and all right, he's kind of winding down, isn't he?
Yeah, he's retiring.
Yeah.
And I kind of hate that because nobody's been able to replicate what Mike does. So you gotta love him or hate him, however you feel. You gotta give him kudos for that. And I've got 3 that came from Mike. They're not Kent bred that I bought from somewhere else. I've got 3. My A litter is out of Spook, which is one that came from him, and then my B litter is out of Kate, that came from him. So, we'll see how they turn out, but yeah, Mike's done a good job with what he's done, and like I said, people can say this and that, but you've been with those 3 dogs, and they catch bear. I mean, I gotta say they catch bear. Now, are they what everybody wants? Maybe not. They got some things about them that I would like to change, but until I can figure out how to do that, this is where I'm at. So,
well, that's a conversation I had yesterday with Randy Smith up there, and talking about putting dogs in the hands of people who know how to give them what they need, tweak them the way they need to be tweaked, so to speak. You find little things about the dogs if you spend enough time with them. And if you use your head and listen to Heath and other podcasters out there, you'll get methods that will enable you, to do what your dog needs too, So I think that's the greatest value of these things, the information that gets passed.
Yeah, it's free. It's free information. It's like a buffet. If you like it, you take it and put it on your plate. If you don't like it, you don't eat it, but you may want to put it in your back pocket for later for another dog.
That's right. It's good advice. Very good advice. Heath, I've been talking all day and the old voice is just about gone. It's great to visit with you. I appreciate you coming on because I know it's like last thing you need to do is sit down on a podcast when you have those of your own to produce, but you're doing a great job and I'm proud of you, boy. And I'm proud of what
you got me started in it.
Yeah. So. And I'm seeing, you progress. I will always be a young man to me and kind of like a son, really. And I got to meet your family years ago and really appreciate them.
That was when Bill was here. We sat down at Anna's and eat that time.
That's right. We did.
Yep. Back to Bill. That's exactly right. We went down to Anna's and Dad and Glad they all come down and
that's right.
We sit down and eat. Yep.
Always a good time when I go up that way. And Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise and the snow don't get too deep, I'm going to be up there next year. I'm going to make a point to do that.
Good.
And sure. Just if nothing else, just to ride around in the truck with you and listen to the hounds.
Well, we can do that for sure.
For sure. Well, Heath Hyatt, content provider extraordinary.
I don't know about all that.
It's been great having you on, Heath. Folks, anywhere you get your podcast, search The Journey. He's gone with the new provider here in a few days, but you'll be able to find him there. If you don't know it already, Heath is a professional trainer of dogs used for police work and for several different departments or different areas or cities, and
Mm-hmm.
a longtime bear hunter and coon hunter and a student of the hound sport. So he's got good stuff to say. So be sure and check him out. Heath, thanks
Yeah.
for coming on, buddy, and we'll
Hey,
catch you down the road.
hey,
Yeah.
let me just say, I want to say one thing. I
Yeah.
know this is a big push, but everybody knows what's going on in Colorado with the mountain lion ballot.
Yeah.
And if you guys are interested or would like to research it or can help, there's a website. It's called SaveTheHuntColorado.com. It's Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, and you all know they're trying to do away with that. And it may not affect us today, but it will affect all of us eventually.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to throw that out there because that's something
give us that information again.
Yep. It's the website you can go to is SaveTheHuntColorado.com. And it puts you on the mountain lion initiative ballot for what's going on. Like I said, if you guys don't know that they're trying to take away all cat hunting, trophy hunting in Colorado, and it's a big push for houndsmen to kind of band together and try to help Colorado, because if they take it there, then like I said, we know how stuff trickles down, and it's gonna affect Virginia, it's gonna affect West Virginia, and it may not be today, and it may not be next year, but sooner or later we're gonna be fighting the same fight.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Just wanted to plug that in.
Absolutely, Heath. Thank you. And folks, that's going to be a wrap for today. Once again, we want to, for all of his friends there, pass on our condolences in the passing of our good friend Bill Wickham. If somebody asks you where's Steve Fielder, just tell them, well, I don't know where he is, but there's one thing for sure. He's gone to the dogs.